I have no idea what they're doing with that. If anybody ever uses it. Are you ready?
Not yet. A few seconds.
Oh.
Okay. We're back on. I wanted to know, what are your current projects?
My current project is saving the world. Now, let me tell you something. I'm going to go back to Wonderama for a moment because that's really where this all starts in my head. New York in the 60s was sort of a mess, and Central Park was clearly a mess. And one day I looked into thinking still what I could do with the power I had, more than selling Cocoa Marsh and toys, which occupied a lot of my thinking. I looked in the camera one day and said, I want you to meet me in 3 weeks in Central Park. We're going to clean up Central Park. Bring your parents, wear old clothes, wear gloves. Now, I had no idea if anybody was going to come. I repeated the invitation for the next 2 weeks. I got a hold of John Lindsay, the mayor. I got a hold of Tom Hoving, who at that time was Parks Commissioner. I got 2 garbage trucks. I got toys. I got 25 Eagle Scouts. I got everything else. Then I got nightmares because I had no idea if anybody was going to come. I said, well, we could certainly breakfast off the egg on my face if nobody shows up. But they came by the thousands. Cleaned up Central Park, and the next day, the articles in the newspaper, including the notice that the governor the mayor having seen this, instituted littering fines in the park for the first time. So we had changed the culture of New York that much with our kids. We really made a difference. So making a difference with by using the power of television had always stayed with me since then. Anyway, in the 80s, I went on the board of an organization called Population Communications International. In 92, I became chairman of the board. And I started working with the community here, the soap opera community, to see if I couldn't get them to pay attention to issues and to use the power inherent in their storytelling. Because what we were doing around the world, what PCI was doing around the world, in India and places like that, was creating soap operas, television and radio soap operas, that would create characterizations and plot lines that would deal with the issues that had to be dealt with in their countries, whatever those issues were, and would do it in a way that the identification that you built up through the drama would carry the person watching to maybe repeat the same action with a good outcome and avoid the one with a bad outcome. So then I started working with the community here, and I was spending more and more time on that when I became chairman of the board. And they came to me and said, well, keep doing this. I said, no, I got my own production company, and if I don't set up my desk and put stuff in the pipeline, 6 months later, nothing comes out the other side, and then I don't eat. So they said, well, why don't you do this full time? Well, this was 1995, and by 95, my company had been open for quite a while, and I thought, I didn't have fire in my belly anymore. You know about ageism in this society, and then certainly in this business. And when I would walk in, gray-haired Irwin would walk into a 27-year-old vice president's office, he saw his grandfather at the door, and he didn't want to do business with his grandfather. I understood that. So I was pretending to be in the business. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I became full-time staff as senior vice president of this company, and then in 96 started doing that, and then in about 4 years later started my own consultancy, because I really now am so impressed by the results of what we are doing and what can be done by tapping into the power of storytelling to change outcomes in health and social issues. So that's what I am doing now. I have my own consultancy to do that. We're going to be doing a major event in November of 2008 out here on climate change, and I'm tying in with the Academy and the Writers Guild. And I've been invited by Hofstra University next spring to do an event there for colleges and universities from around the Northeast about how to use this methodology. We are doing stuff in Asia and Africa. And now other people like BBC is doing it, and others. So it is becoming now more and more a known way. The power that we have as storytellers. Remember, storytelling is the oldest way of communications we have as human beings. From the time men stopped grunting and used words, this is the way they did it. Well, we are the storytellers, and now those people who can bring you around the campfire, which we call a television screen, and day, by week. So I always tell them, you have magic. You really have the magic when you can do this. And how do we use that magic? So it's a challenge to them to do this. Now we have an enormous amount of wonderful research and so on. So it's gratifying when the International Television Academy, as I've mentioned, invites me to do a whole weekend of these panels on socially responsible programming. And I'm invited here and there, you know, to work with people on this. So to me, it's a wonderful last act, if you will. It's a way of taking everything that I've talked about, that I've learned, and all the contacts I've made, and now using it to purpose and thinking maybe we're making a difference. So this is why I'm so delighted to talk about what I'm doing.
What advice would you give to someone starting out today in television?
Well, you know, when you say starting out in television, it's no longer an easy answer. What part of television are they starting out in? Are they going into interactive? Are they going into, you know, digital? Are they going into network? Are they going into cable? Are they going... I mean, there is no longer television. There's, what, visual communications. I don't know what you should call it now. I don't know that television is any longer a satisfying name to call it. I mean... refine your question. You're talking about going into television, small television?
I guess into the broadcast industry as it.
No, that doesn't help me.
No.
You know what? If I were young and starting out, I think I would go into the cutting edge, where I was when we started inventing television, where nobody can tell you what you can't do, because nobody knows what you can do. Where nobody is paying you a lot of money, but nobody is stopping you from trying new things. That's where I would go, because that's where the adventure is. You know, you come to a place that has stultification written all over it. They have rules, they have invested interests, you got to go by the numbers. Changing it is very difficult. I would go where the change is just what you're talking about, and where tomorrow is, say, come up with an answer, we don't know, you know. And you won't get paid a lot at first, and you may bounce around a little, but that's not bad either. So if I were an adventurous young person, that's what I would do.
And what about someone who wanted to be on-camera talent, who wanted to say, host a children's show? What advice would you give them?
You know, I don't know how to say, first of all, what I would say, you start off by respecting your audience. You start off by saying these kids are not to be exploited. They're not just an audience that you look at as rating points, but each one is an individual human being that has tremendous potential, but also is a little dangerous. One of the things I try to remember to tell people about young kids is there is a Gothic quality about them. They still listen to the voices that in the dark that we forget to listen to when we grow up. They still believe in goblins and devils and witches and magic and even grammar, all that old-fashioned stuff, you know. And love them, but don't turn your back on them, you know. But that's what makes them fascinating. I ran into a young lady once. I was doing a pilot for Fox I just want to do a show where I just went out and listened to kids. 8-year-old, adorable child with a friend in the zoo, Easter Sunday, just walking through. And I said, what do you do what do you do? How, you know? She said, well, every afternoon I go to heaven and I play with my grandmother. I said, in your head? No, I go to heaven. With your grandmother, yeah. And is she okay? Oh, yeah. She said, well, what does she look like? What do you do? How you do? Her doppelganger was this. She was up in heaven, saw her relatives. This was not a disturbed child. This was not a queer child. This was a child who had a rich, imaginative life going on inside that head. Now, if you don't appreciate that about children, then you're missing a lot of what makes children special, you know? And that's the only advice. If anybody wants to work with children, just think of what they are and who they are, and appreciate that. Don't come down to their level. Don't try to be a child. Don't try to demean, and don't ever condescend. But appreciate and explore, and then you can have a good time doing it.
What do you think has been the highlight of your career?
You know, when you've had a career that spans from 1947 to 2008, picking out a highlight, I'm tempted to say I'm here. That's the highlight. You know, I tell you what, seriously speaking, I appreciate so much of what I've been talking about, and I have wonderful memories and still contact with some of those memories personally with people. I can't wait to get up in the morning and find out what the next page is. Somebody once asked me for an interview, what are the fantasies in your life? And that stopped me. And I said, you know, I don't have any fantasies. The reality of my life has so far exceeded my childhood fantasies. I don't have fantasies. I have a life. I don't know how to say anything better than that. I don't know how to go back and dwell on areas and say that was the best time, that was the best time, I wish I hadn't done that. That's history, and it unscrolls, and it's fascinating to look at once in a while. But this thing that's coming up in November is really very interesting and exciting to me. I can't wait to see if Robin Bates, the author, is going to let me do his one-act play about how a writer is asked to do a play about climate change and writes a play about how he can't write a play about a climate change, which is one of the things I want to use here for the writers, and get him out. That's exciting to me. See, to me, that's much more exciting than going back and saying, well, what happened 50 years ago?
Our last question that we ask our interviewees is, how would you like to be remembered?
Sally, how do I answer that? Oh, she's not here. How would I like to be remembered? I think as somebody who cared about more than just being a television personality or a star or a producer, who understood the context, who also had a profound sense of wonder at the journey he has taken from that unsuccessful adolescent in Brooklyn to where I've come, the people I've worked with, the people I've had the joy of working with, the talent. I have a very large ego, but when I get a Julie Harris or a Jack Guilford or all those wonderful people I've worked with, or Alan J. Lerner, or people I park my ego and I'm in service to their talent. I'm in awe of their talent. To be able to have intersected and interacted and worked with some of these people has been such a wonderful, joyous thing for me. So I'd like to be remembered as somebody who understood and appreciated the moments as they happened, not just in retrospect. I knew as I was doing what I was doing how special all of this was. I think because I assume I've been on borrowed time since a bullet went through my clothing at 19 and missed me. And I figured, okay, so since 19 I've been on borrowed time.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.